Hey gardening friends, ready to grow healthier plants, bigger harvests, and smarter gardens? Let's get started.
What if everything you thought you knew about growing potatoes has been quietly working against you this whole time? What if the one thing you have always done to get a bigger harvest is the exact reason your potatoes never grow as large as you hoped? Welcome to the Smart Gardener. If you are new here, this is the place where we dig into the old ways of growing food that actually work. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss what we put out next. Now, here is the truth that took me years to understand. Most gardeners look at a potato covered in sprouts and think the same thing. More sprouts mean more plants mean more potatoes, so leave them all on. It sounds like plain good sense. But what you end up with after all that work is a pile of small marbles. Potatoes so tiny they are hardly worth washing, let alone eating. My father taught me this lesson the hard way when I was just a boy. I planted my own row my way, leaving every single sprout on, certain I was going to outdo him. Come harvest time, his row gave up great heavy potatoes, firm and solid in the hand. Mine gave up a sorry tangle of little things, no bigger than a child's fist. He knelt down beside my row, looked it over, and said quietly, "You gave them too many mouths to feed, and none of them got enough." I have never forgotten those words, and today I am going to walk you through the old method, step by step, from choosing your seed all the way to setting it in the ground, so that this season you dig up the finest, biggest potatoes you have ever grown in your life. Before you ever put a single potato in the ground, you need to make one decision that shapes everything that follows. Choosing the right variety for what you actually want to grow. If you want potatoes that bake fluffy, fry golden and crisp, or mash into something rich and satisfying, a russet is your potato. The skin is thick, the flesh is dry and starchy, and a good russet stored in a cool, dark cellar will carry your family through an entire winter. If you want something more all-purpose that roasts creamy on the inside with a little crisp on the outside and works just as well mashed or boiled, a Yukon Gold is hard to beat. And if you are after something you can boil whole, toss into a summer salad, or pull early from the ground, a red Pontiac will serve you well. It holds its shape when cooked and matures faster than most. Now here is the rule that matters above all others. Only plant-certified seed potatoes, or potatoes you grew yourself and held back from last season. Never use potatoes from the grocery store. Most have been treated with a chemical that prevents sprouting, and you may plant them and get nothing back at all. This brings us to chitting. About 1 to 2 weeks before planting, set your seed potatoes in a cool, bright spot out of direct sun and let them wake up. Look for sprouts that are short, thick, and sturdy. Long, pale, stringy sprouts mean a weak plant. And if after 2 full weeks your potatoes still show no sprouts at all, do not plant them. That is a clear sign they were chemically treated or are simply too far gone. Cut your losses and find better seed, because no amount of good soil will fix a potato that cannot sprout. In parts of this country where the growing season runs short, that 2-week head start from chitting can mean the difference between a full harvest and one that never quite finishes. Now we come to the single most important rule in this entire method. No more than 2 sprouts on every piece of potato you plant. Just 2. Here is why. Every sprout becomes a stem, and every stem competes with every other for the same water and nutrients from that one piece of soil. Plant a potato with 12 sprouts, and you get 12 weak stems all fighting each other, spreading the plant so thin that the energy gets divided into dozens of tiny marbles not worth the digging. But rub off every sprout except the 2 strongest ones, and those 2 stems get everything. All the food, all the water, all the strength pours into just a few potatoes, and those potatoes grow large. Do not hesitate when pinching off the extras. It feels wrong to remove something healthy, but that act of removal is exactly what creates the size. For cutting, the rule is simple. Any potato smaller than roughly 2 ounces, about the size of a hen's egg, plant it whole. Anything larger, cut it into pieces, making sure every piece carries at least 1 good eye. Then apply the 2 sprout rule to each piece. Now here is the step most gardeners skip, and it is the one that quietly ruins more seed than anything else. When you cut a potato, you have opened a raw wound. Push that fresh, wet cut into cold, damp soil, and you are inviting rot and disease straight in. Instead, lay your cut pieces with the cut face pointing up on a dry shelf indoors. out of direct sun and away from moisture, and leave them for about a week. Over those days, the cut surface dries out and forms a tough, corky skin called a callus that seals and protects the piece. You will know it is ready when that cut face shifts from pale and wet to dry and firm with a slightly tan color to it. 1 week of patience here saves more seed potatoes than any product you could ever buy. With your seed potatoes cured and ready, it is time to talk about the ground. Because the soil is not just where you put the potato, the soil is what determines how big that potato can ever get. And the one quality it absolutely must have is this. It needs to be loose, deep and loose. A potato does not dig or push. It simply swells outward as it fills with starch and water. Hard-packed soil squeezes it from every side and keeps it small. But soil that is soft and open all the way down gives that potato room to expand freely, and it grows large. Work your bed at least 1 full foot deep and fill that foot with compost and well-rotted manure. Heavy clay ground needs plenty of compost worked through it to break up that tight structure. Sandy ground needs compost too, to hold moisture instead of letting it drain away. Either way, compost is the answer. And once your seed pieces are in the ground, leave the soil loose on top. Every bit of looseness is room a potato can grow into. For feeding, work a balanced granular fertilizer into the top 6 to 8 inches before planting, at roughly 2 to 3 pounds per 100 square feet. This covers nitrogen for early leafy growth, and phosphorus for root and tuber development. About a month in, once the plant shifts focus to swelling its tubers underground, potassium becomes the most important nutrient. Potassium drives sugar from the leaves down into the developing potatoes and determines their final size and storage quality. Clean wood ash from your fireplace, used lightly, is one of the finest natural sources of potassium the old growers relied on. One thing to be clear about: do not lime your potato bed. Potatoes prefer slightly acid soil, with a pH between 5.0 and 6.0. Raise that pH, and a fungal problem called common scab will put rough, corky patches on your potato skins. A simple, inexpensive soil test from your local hardware store takes about 10 minutes and removes all the guesswork. When it is time to plant, set each piece 6 to 8 inches deep, with the sprouts pointing up. Space pieces 12 inches apart within the row and keep rows 18 inches apart from each other. Water the bed in well after planting, and from that point on, aim for 1 to 2 inches of water each week, with the most consistent moisture coming once the plants begin to flower, because that is when your tubers are swelling fastest, and even watering matters most. There is one more practice that most modern gardeners either skip or do only once and forget about. And it is one of the quietest ways to lose yield without ever knowing why. It is called hilling, and it is the old grower's secret for keeping the harvest going strong all the way to the end. Once your plants reach about 6 to 8 inches tall, mound loose soil up around the base of each one, covering the lower 2/3 of the stem and leaving only the top leaves exposed. 2 to 3 weeks later, when the plants have grown another 6 to 8 inches, hill them again. A third hilling 2 weeks after that is worth doing if the plants are still actively growing. By the end of the season, your mound should stand about 10 to 12 inches high. The reason hilling matters so much is simple. Potatoes form along the buried stem above the seed piece, not below it. Every inch of stem you cover creates more space for new tubers to develop, and any tuber that pushes up near the surface and catches sunlight will turn green and develop solanine, which is bitter and mildly toxic. Hilling keeps everything in the dark where it belongs. For your second hilling, consider using straw instead of soil. Straw holds moisture better through summer heat, and at harvest time you simply pull it aside instead of digging through packed earth. Now here is something the old growers understood that almost nobody talks about anymore, and it costs nothing at all. Companion planting. A border of marigolds around your potato bed will repel the Colorado potato beetle, the most destructive pest potato growers across this country face every year, through scent alone without any spray or chemical. Herbs like cilantro, basil, and parsley, when allowed to flower, draw in ladybugs and parasitic wasps that feed on the soft-bodied pests, damaging your plants. Your garden builds its own defense. On the other side, keep potatoes well away from tomatoes, cucumbers, and squash, as all of them share the same late blight disease, and one infected plant will spread it fast. Keep distance from peach, apple, and cherry trees as well, as those fruit trees pull blight in from outside the garden. So here is where everything lands. What you have heard today is not a handful of separate tips. It is one complete system. Choose the right variety. Chit your seed properly. Hold to 2 sprouts. Cure your cuts. Build your soil deep and loose. Feed at the right time. Hill as your plants grow. And let marigolds and herbs stand guard around the edges. None of it costs anything beyond the knowing. And now that you have it, it will work for you every single season. Tell me in the comments what state you garden in, what variety you grow, and whether you have ever tried the 2-sprout rule. I read every one. Next time we are covering harvest timing and winter storage, where all of this hard work finally pays off. Stay close,